She was a source of stability and comfort during turbulent times. Now King Charles will have to convince the country he can be the steadying force that his mother once was, and the stakes are high. Joining me now is Clive Irving, a Queen Elizabeth biographer and former managing editor of the Sunday Times. Also, Lola Adeshoye, social and political writer and commentator, born and raised in London. So, Clive, it has been a remarkable 10 days here, and there are images that are seared into my brain from all that we've witnessed. But one of the things that I keep going back to is something you told me early on as we were watching the accession and we were watching the procession in the city of London. And you said this was pageant as intoxicant. After this 10 days of pageantry that we witnessed, what do you think of it now?
I actually think I said it's pageant as narcotic, but meaning the same thing. I think a lot of this seems to be facade. It's almost like a Potemkin village exercise in that there's all this regal display of something that, as one of your guests said earlier, nobody does it better than the British, but you always have to ask what lies behind the facade. And in terms of the future of the monarchy, you can't separate the future of the monarchy from the future of the country, and therefore the condition of the country has to be taken into account when you think how Charles can handle this. And the legacy is since I made that statement on that programme with you, Katie, there's been a whole wave of comment following up on that. In fact, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, when he arrived in London, announced that he was considering becoming a republic and doing away with the crown as the head of state. And this legacy, it requires something that I haven't seen coming from the Windsor family at any stage in recent history, which is it requires atonement. It requires acknowledgement of the true cost to those colonies of slavery, which began under Charles II in 1666, because he founded this thing with a very innocent title called the Royal Africa Company, which actually concealed a very evil enterprise, which was shipping slaves from Africa to the Caribbean colonies. About a quarter of those slaves died before they got there, chained below the decks. And then that was subsequently succeeded by colonial societies leading right through to the 20th century, in which the crown played the part of head of state. So although you can't lay the cost of slavery, the human cost and the terrible other costs of slavery, at the doors of the present monarchy or even at the Queen, the institution, the crown itself, is responsible. There's a continuity going right through to now. And you can see that because this situation was completely misjudged by Prince William when he went to the Caribbean earlier this year, because he hadn't been, although, I said that he hadn't been properly briefed, but I thought about that afterwards, and I thought, how can a guy who had the education that William had, he had one of the best educations you can get, how could he not know about this?
Well, Clive, we could listen to you all day and glory in the bookshelves behind you and the model planes as well. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your history. And I want to ask Lola about Charles. King Charles has made a pledge to be the king of all people in Britain. Does the average Londoner, or even someone living in a Commonwealth country, now reduced to 14 from the 54 some when she took over as a 25-year-old queen, do they feel the same way about King Charles?
That's a great question. I think that's something that King Charles is going to have to grapple with. I think this is definitely the end. The Queen's death is definitely the end of an era. And I've been thinking about what that is. And that is sort of the end of empire. Hard empire ended, but there's been soft imperialism. And the one thing that British people know how to do very well, as we've seen over the past 10 days, is spectacle and show and symbolism. So what is the symbolism of King Charles as a head of state of Commonwealth countries? And that's the question that he's going to have to grapple with. Some things really I find difficult. I find it very difficult to sing God Save the Queen. And some of the lines from the national anthem, and, they've always been there, but long to reign over us, not so sure about that. And I don't know how Commonwealth countries feel about that either. So it's a time to look back on the Queen's legacy, but also it's a time to look forward because there is a new king, and all of that is connected.
Lola Adeshoye and Clive Irving, thanks to both of you.